These days, terrariums come with all different kind of plants planted in them. I'm with Stephanie today from the Oregon Orchid Society, and she's going to show us how to put orchids in a terrarium. Well, thanks so much for bringing all these plants. So what about orchids in terrariums? I think it's something very unusual.
Well, there's a few kinds of orchids that will do actually better in terrariums than they will as a houseplant or in a greenhouse, because you can control the humidity better. But you also have to consider that a terrarium is a limited size, so you have to select orchids that are miniature, shade-loving orchids, because terrariums cannot be put in direct sun because they heat up like a car would and kill the plants inside. And then you also have to have orchids that like temperatures that you live in, because you're going to have them in your house. So normal household temperatures, they can't be hot-growing orchids or cool-growing orchids. So those are the three criteria that you have to select your orchids that will do well in a terrarium.
Well, that sounds a lot easier, because you think, oh, I need to have something so special to put this beautiful piece in, but really it's going to be part of our area in our home, so
Right.
that really is nice. So is this a different way to make a terrarium than I would if I use tropical little houseplants?
No, it's pretty much the same way you would build a terrarium. You start with the charcoal, and then you add a layer of gravel, and then you put your soil mix on top of that, and then you, depending on the type of orchid you have, then you go from there to specialize it.
So we're going to take a break, and we're going to go from this to this, and we'll be right back. Okay, so Stephanie, we put down some charcoal, and how much is that do we put in?
So we put about a 1/2 inch of charcoal and a 1/2 inch of gravel on top of that. And then I put a good layer of sphagnum moss.
And why is that? I've never seen that before.
Well, sphagnum moss helps to keep the drainage layer from getting clogged with the soil mix.
Sure.
So, and then you put the soil mix on, and then I like to put on top of that is some more sphagnum moss, which I cut up into pieces.
Okay, and I noticed that you used an African violet mix, and you like the lightness of that?
Yes, and I also add 1/3 perlite to that to make it even lighter, because you want to make sure that these terrariums don't become saturated with water,
sure.
and you want air around the roots. So that's basically why you do the drainage layer, because there's no way for moisture to escape.
Right. And then what's the sphagnum on top of this?
This is sort of a mulch.
Oh, okay.
So I plant through this, actually. I make little holes, and it just makes it easier, I've found, than trying to put the moss around the plants after you put them in.
Okay.
So,
and are we ready to put the plants in, or is there another step?
no, then we water. So
okay.
I'm trying to moisten the soil
All right.
just enough, which is sometimes you have to do this several times because you don't want to overwater. You have to be fairly judicious
Okay.
with the terrarium and not to saturate everything. So you just want
Oh, I
to
see it
sort of
kinda-
watch the soil.
Sure, it's kind of, you can see the
and-
water going down. And now this is the fun part when you choose the plants. And so you have really a beautiful assortment of very miniature type orchids.
Right.
And what are you looking for, the ones that we'll put in?
Well, of course, it's got to be the right size.
Okay.
So the orchid may be the centerpiece, but it doesn't bloom year-round generally. So then you have companion plants for the orchid to make the terrarium look attractive all the time. And so a lot of the better companion plants for these shade-loving orchids are shade-loving begonias, but they have to be the small ones that don't get very large. And these are a selection of begonias that can be kept fairly small, manageable in a terrarium. And here's a Gesneriad, a Syningia, that also adds color periodically with these bright orange flowers. So I thought that would go well with this Dendrobium.
Oh, look at
Unfortunately, this has a downward facing flower, and you might want to consider when you get your orchid how you're going to position your terrarium and which way you want to
Sure,
look at the
sure.
flowers rather than turning it upside
Right.
down. So, but we'll put the orchid in last.
All right.
Because first of all, we're going to take these long, they're forceps, but I call them tweezers, and we'll make a hole through the mulch,
Oh, pretty
the
handy
sphagnum, and then we'll take a plant, and this is a black-leaved begonia. This one's called Little Night Music, and it's great in terrariums, which is...
Can I help you? There you go. All right, there we go. Just tease it out of the pot.
Right.
And right into its new home.
Yep. And also when you're selecting a container, I always find it's nice to have one with a wide top, so you could use your fingers as well as, you know, forceps. So another plant, let's see, here's a nice silver-leaved one. And
really the size of the container is going to dictate how many plants you put in and to there. So this is where you can get really creative, and that's the fun part.
yes, and you can get really dirty too.
Of course. Well, it's gardening.
So, and this is the point where you take a lot of plants, you put them in, sometimes they don't look so good. you pull them out
again,
and you get another one, you know, but...
Just make a little hole in the soil there and just push it gently in.
Plop it in, yep.
Well, that is just looking so beautiful there. All right, and then the final piece.
And then we want to find a place for the orchids. So basically you can move these guys around because they're not rooted in.
So it's nice to attach it to a piece of wood or a piece of cork.
Right.
And then the orchid could be kind of standing on its own.
Right.
Very nice.
So, and this, then you can add, you know, you can add decorative rocks on one side, maybe just sort of create like a river or a riverbank or a cliff, and decorate.
So you're just adding some natural elements just to add bling to the terrarium.
Right, just to make it a little bit more naturalistic, little out of the ordinary.
Well, you know, this is a great project for you to have beautiful orchids in your home. And so if you need any more information about making terrariums or orchids in general, you can go to the Oregon Orchid Society webpage, or you can go to gardentime.tv and we'll click you over to that page. Thank you so much for everything.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it.